This
program is a special edition of FNN Focus. The opinions expressed are only those of the guest host and do not reflect those of the producers, FNN, or any of its sponsors.
Oh, there's that music again. Okay, you heard that little disclaimer in the front. Yes, these are my opinions. However, the facts are the facts. I'm Frank Zappa, and I'm taking the place of Bob Berkowitz, who's out on a book tour selling this little wonder. And I want to thank him for allowing me to sit in his chair for a while. And tonight's guest is Daniel Shore from Washington. Hello, Daniel.
Frank, hi.
What do you think about a broadcast that needs to put a disclaimer like that right at the top? What do they think could possibly be said on the air that warrants a disclaimer like that?
Oh, I think that the disclaimer was not complete enough. All they said was not the opinion, was the opinion of the host, but how about the guest?
I don't know. I think they slipped up on that one. I wonder whether they really believe that putting something like that on the air before the show covers them legally for every possible eventuality on the air.
In television, especially since Andy Rooney, disclaimers make them feel good. They disclaim all over the place. It makes them feel better.
Well, this brings us to the first question I'd like to ask you about why you're not on the air on television anymore. Could you tell us about how you left CBS?
Oh, how I left CBS, yes. It's a lot of years back, and I think a lot of your viewers are too young really to have known that time, but back in 1976, I was covering the investigations of the CIA and the FBI and the intelligence agencies, which had done very bad things. And in the course of covering that, I got a copy of a report by a congressional committee, which I wasn't supposed to have at that point, and decided that report had to be published when the House of Representatives voted to suppress the report. And I had what was the only copy of the report in the free world, so to speak. And so I arranged to publish it, which got me into trouble with the House of Representatives, Secretary Henry Kissinger, President for the CIA, and last but not least, and most painfully, with my own employer, CBS, who came under a great deal of pressure from many of their affiliates. And so they at first suspended me, and then we had a big go-around back and forth. And after several months, they decided they wanted me to go back to work, but by that time the thing was all poisoned, and I just simply left. It was a great institution, CBS, which then, as now, sometimes feels that it has to throw one of its people to the wolves in order to get along with what they consider to be the powers.
Well, tell me, what was in the report that was so horrible?
Oh, there were some very interesting things in the report. It told about how money was poured in to influence the Italian election. It told about how they corrupted the Korean CIA. It told about how they had taken a lot of money, and in order to finance a revolution by the Kurds against Iraq. But then when the Shah of Iran said, let's call it off, then Henry Kissinger dumped the Kurds and let them go their way and go to destruction and ruin. It talked a lot about covert operations, many of them improper, some of them possibly illegal, and it made the CIA look very bad, in fact.
Well, isn't there a parallel there between the amount of money that we've kind of funneled into Nicaragua in recent times?
Yeah, there's a pale parallel. See, now as a result of that investigation, the CIA can't do that kind of thing anymore, and they have rules in place that say if the CIA engages in operations like that, the president is duty-bound to inform Congress. And in fact, what happened in this whole Iran-Contra operation was they said, okay, the CIA can't do it, we'll invent our own little CIA. And so Oliver North had a little CIA of his own working through the staff of the National Security Council, and this was the next generation of covert action. And
so you told the story, was that the first instance of that kind of stuff that went on the air, or had there ever been stories like that before?
It had been going on the air piecemeal, but in this case what I had was the entire report of 330 pages as compiled by a House Investigating Committee with the intention of publishing it, but because the House of Representatives was manipulated by the CIA and the Ford administration, they voted to suppress the report. And since I had a copy of it, I said, the House of Representatives may vote to suppress it, but I'm not a member of the House of Representatives, so I guess I've got to publish it.
Mm-hmm. And then the next time I saw you on television was when you went on CNN in the early days of CNN. Can you tell something about that?
Well, yes. In 1979, Ted Turner asked me to help him start CNN, and I still think he was a very interesting person with a great conception of what goes on in the world of communications. He saw that there was room for a 24-hour-a-day news service on television. He also saw the way cable was going to grow. He had great and marvelous ideas looking into the future of this industry, and convinced me that there was a future for me in it, and there was, and I worked with him for 5 years. But what Ted Turner lacks was that tradition of if you are the entrepreneur, the owner of the place, you stay out of editorial decisions. He thought it's his little candy store, and all parts of it were his candy store. So we would have a brush between us every now and then, which finally ended up with a real problem when he wanted me to appear on the air as a co-commentator with John Connolly, the former Treasury Secretary, former governor of Texas, because he was buttering up John Connolly to try to raise enough money to buy CBS, which in those days he was trying to do. And I try to explain that I don't relate to people who are not journalists, so we had a little problem over that. And in the end, we parted ways. At the time, it was not a terribly friendly thing, but since that time, I think we've kind of mended fences. I wrote him a letter in which I told him, I said, you know, you're a maverick, and I'm a maverick, but we're apparently from different herds. And he liked that, and he wrote back, and we see each other every now and then at some party or other and shake hands, and he thanks me for having helped to start what has become a very successful, very large, and very important organization. I mean, you know, it goes back and forth across the world in a way that in Moscow they sit and look at stories from Moscow, coming back to Moscow, and make decisions accordingly. It's made a great thing of it, and I guess I was very happy to help him start it, but it's gone and gotten a lot bigger and maybe even better without me.
Well, I wish you were back on the air on that one. I think we have to go to a commercial now, and we'll be back. We're back with Daniel Shore, and Daniel, I'd like to start this part off by taking a phone call from Iggy from New York, who has an interesting question. Iggy?
Yes, I'd like to ask Mr. Shore why the media doesn't do more to expose the corruption in government. I refer specifically to the $2 million Ronald Reagan got from the Japanese. Nobody's ever pointed out what this was for, signing off on the FSX fighter plane or overlooking trade violations. Why do you think the media doesn't do more to point these things out to the American people?
Well, you know, we do, I don't know what we mean do more to point it out. You can't really cram it down people's throat. I thought the story of Ronald Reagan getting $2 million to go up to Tokyo and spend a couple of days and make a very short speech, which was written for him anyway, got an awful lot of attention. I mean, if it didn't, how did you know about it? But, you know, I think it's, if you want to ask me whether I think it's a scandal, yes, I think it's a scandal. I think that the idea that the Japanese have bought Rockefeller Center, and they want one Rockefeller Center, they want one Columbia Pictures, and they want to buy one president, I think that's not the most wonderful thing in the world. I think it certainly makes Jimmy Carter look better and better as an ex-president compared to Ronald. Ronald Reagan is running around picking up dough while Jimmy Carter is down in Nicaragua trying to help make peace down there. I agree with the thought expressed in your question, but as to there's no act of trying to suppress all of this, because I thought the story got a lot of play, but a lot of things happen and you go on to other stories.
Okay, let's take another call. This is from Gary from New York.
Hi, Frank.
Hi, Gary.
Can there ever really be a true balance of fairness in news commentary, and what is the real meaning of liberal media bias?
You know, go ahead.
I think that the business of fairness is like any ideal. It's a thing you strive for and never quite achieve, and you keep trying to improve yourself. I think it's a relative kind of fairness. I think that I try myself to be fair. A lot of people tell me I don't succeed, but I do keep trying. This business of liberal media bias, those three words are thrown together by people who think that if it's biased, it's got to be liberal, and if it's liberal, it probably goes with the media. It goes with the general perception that because people in the media generally have more education than the average, since they've got to learn to use some English and so on, they're generally conceived to come from Eastern universities, Ivy League universities, And they managed to collect a lot of flack from people who think that they're not ordinarily people like us. They get better paid, they're better treated, and they seem to have opinions which run to the left of us. I find myself that more and more you find a lot of conservative media bias. I mean, I keep thinking of very conservative commentators like George Will and my friend Bill Sapphire. Nobody ever calls them biased because they're conservative, which means, as my friend Eric Severide at CBS once said, there's a lot more biased listening than there is biased commenting.
You know, I happen to think that CNN has got a very strong right-wing bias in the way that it covers the news. Do you get that sensation from their packaging?
Not the way they cover the news. I think that the way they cover the news tends to be fairly neutral. I mean, there's nothing as neutral as putting on a live event and letting you look at it and make up your own mind about it, and CNN specializes in bringing